Thematic analysis was first developed as an analytic approach in the 1970s, and since then a number of different versions have been proposed within psychology. We are teaching thematic analysis as Braun and Clark 2006 view it, a methodology rather than a method because of the theoretical flexibility associated with it. The search for and examination of patterning across language does not require adherence to any particular theory of language or explanatory meaning framework for human beings, experiences or practices. Therefore, thematic analysis may be applied within a range of theoretical frameworks from realist to constructionalist to contextualism. These are defined in the glossary on the website. Interpretation of data is guided by any one of the epistemologies above, e.g. realism, plurality, the number of perspectives in that data, and researcher reflexivity, personal assumptions, values and life experiences shaping interpretation of the data. Braun and Clark 2006 outlines 6 steps to thematic analysis. The analytic process is a recursive one. The analyst moves back and forth between the steps rather than moving on to the next step before completing the one prior in a linear fashion. For this reason, the analytic process can be quite messy. The 6 steps are familiarisation with the data, coding, theme searching, reviewing the themes, naming and defining the themes, and the report write-up. For a detailed explanation of these, please see the Steps to Analysis section on the website. Step 1 involves familiarisation with the data. Step 2 is the coding phase. In thematic analysis, coding involves generating concise labels for important features of the data relevant to the broad research question. Every data item is coded during line-by-line coding. During step 3, the analyst searches for themes. A theme is a coherent and meaningful pattern in the data relevant to the research question. Step 4 is the theme reviewing phase. The researcher checks that the theme relates to the coded extracts, exemplifying them, as well as the full dataset and broader research question. The themes are named and defined during step 5. The researcher writes a detailed description of the themes, identifying the essence and creating a punchy, informative name for each. The final step is the write-up. Writing up involves weaving together the analytic narrative and vivid data extracts to tell the reader a coherent and persuasive story about the data and contextualising it in relation to existing literature. As mentioned earlier, because of its theoretical flexibility, a number of decisions must be made before diving straight into the analysis. These methodological decisions are very important because they guide and are guided by one's epistemology, how we know, and ontology, what we can know based on this. To ensure ongoing reflexive dialogue and data interpretation consistent with how you intend it to be, researchers should be mindful of these decisions throughout the analytic process. These are mentioned below, but again you are directed to the ongoing reflexive dialogue section on the website. The researcher decides what is a theme, what type of analysis is to be done, is the analysis theory driven or data driven, and the level of analysis which will be conducted. First, the researcher decides what counts as a theme. It is up to the researcher to decide the keyness of a theme. This depends more on how it relates to the research question rather than how often it appears in the data set. Second, the researcher considers the type of analysis he or she wants to do. This can be a rich description of the entire data set or a detailed and nuanced account of one particular theme or group of themes within the data. Third, the researcher must decide whether the analysis is inductive or theoretical. For an inductive, bottom-up approach, the themes identified are strongly linked to the data. Inductive coding doesn't try to fit a pre-existing coding frame or the researcher's analytic preconceptions. The opposite is true in a theoretical, top-down deductive approach. This tends to be driven by the researcher's theoretical or analytic interest in the area, so it is more explicitly analyst-driven. Fourth, researchers generally focus on one level of analysis. Themes are identified at a semantic or a latent level. Semantic themes are identified within the surface meaning of the data. Latent themes start to identify or examine underlying ideas, assumptions, conceptualizations, and ideologies theorized as informing the semantic content of the data. This decision-making process describes why and how this is a theoretical flexibility in thematic analysis. Most vitally, the decision-making process derives how the data is interpreted. From what we've learned so far, it is clear that within thematic analysis, there are many ways to interpret the data using connected knowing.
created using Powtoon.